All right, let's talk about stretching. We're going to break down what's really happening inside your muscles when you stretch. And I'm willing to bet the science behind it is pretty different from what you've always heard.
You know the scene, right? You see it before every single race, every game. It's that classic pre-game ritual. The athlete's done their warm-up, and now it's time for that final universal move, the stretch. We're all taught it's super important to avoid things like muscle tears or pulls.
But here's the big question. Does that classic routine actually prevent injury? And if it does make you feel more flexible, how long does that benefit even last? To figure this out, we've got to look at what's really going on deep inside our muscles. Okay, so first up, let's really zoom in on this pre-race ritual, this thing that so many of us do, almost on autopilot. So there are basically two main kinds of stretching. You've got dynamic stretching, that's when you're doing active movements like leg swings. But for what we're talking about today, we're going to focus on the one everybody knows, the static stretch, where you just hold a position for a little while. Okay, let's get really specific. Imagine our runner is holding a classic 30-second hamstring stretch. What in the world is happening deep inside their leg during those 30 seconds?
All right, to really get what's happening, we first have to throw out a huge misconception. A lot of us think of our muscles as being like simple rubber bands, but that's really not the whole picture.
So yeah, here's the deal. We tend to think of muscles as being elastic, like a rubber band that just snaps right back into shape. But in reality, they're viscoelastic. That visco part is the game changer. It means they change shape when you put pressure on them, but they don't snap back immediately. They kind of slowly return to normal, almost like they remember being stretched. So to really understand why this whole viscoelastic thing is so important, we have to zoom in. I mean, way, way in. Okay, it's time to meet the hero of this story, the sarcomere. These are the tiniest, and I mean tiniest, building blocks inside your muscle fibers. Just picture millions of little elastic units that are constantly lengthening and shortening every time you move. This is where the magic of stretching actually happens. Okay, so you're holding that stretch, your sarcomeres are lengthening, but here comes the big surprise. Let's talk about what's called the 10-minute effect. So as our runner is holding that 30-second hamstring stretch, something pretty cool is happening. The muscle's own internal resistance starts to go down. This is what allows the muscle fibers to lengthen just a little bit more. It's that feeling you get when you can kind of sink deeper into a stretch. So you feel great, right? Looser, more flexible, ready to take on the world. You've unlocked this new range of motion. But this amazing newfound flexibility, well, it only lasts for 10 minutes. That's it. Seriously. All that benefit you got from that single pre-game stretch, it's pretty much gone in the time it takes you to walk over to the starting line. So, why is it so ridiculously short-lived? Well, it all comes back to that viscoelastic property we talked about. The muscle tissue just gradually creeps back to its normal resting length. Now, sure, during a game, you're moving around, your muscles are warm, and that helps maintain the flexibility. But the second you stop and rest, that 10-minute clock starts ticking, and the effect just fades away.
Okay, so if a single stretch is basically just a temporary fix, then how in the world do you build real, lasting flexibility?
The answer is actually fascinating. See, true long-term flexibility isn't about just temporarily stretching out the muscle fibers you already have. It's about physically remodeling your muscles by adding brand new sarcomeres, stacking them end to end. So, how do you make that happen? Well, research shows it's kind of like a three-step process. First, and this is the big one, consistency. We're talking at least 10 minutes of stretching every day for about 2 months. Second comes the construction. Your body gets the message and responds by physically building and adding those new sarcomeres. And third, and this is so cool, is communication. Your brain actually adapts. It learns to turn down the pain signals it sends, which means your tolerance for the stretch goes up and you can go even further.
But this brings up a really important question. Now that we know how to get more flexible, is being more flexible always a good thing?
And maybe surprisingly, the answer is no, not always. It's way better to think of stretching as a specific tool for a specific job. It's absolutely fantastic for improving your joints' range of motion, and yeah, it can reduce the risk of some muscle tears. But it is not a magic fix for everything. For sports that don't need a huge range of motion, it might not prevent the most common injuries. And for people who are already super flexible, hypermobile, static stretching can actually make them more prone to injury.
Let's go back to our long-distance runner for a perfect example. Running is a pretty limited repetitive motion, right? So that pre-race hamstring stretch we keep talking about, it doesn't really do much to prevent the most common running injuries, which are usually in the knees or shins. It has almost nothing to do with tight hamstrings. It's just the wrong tool for the job. So the big takeaway here is that different goals and different bodies need different approaches. Stretching is definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. So now that you know the real science behind it, the whole 10-minute effect, how to actually build flexibility by adding sarcomeres, and when it's useful and when it's not, the real question I have for you is, how will you stretch differently?